It all starts now. Hey gang, this is Nick Z from the 49 Teens. Welcome to Rock Talk, episode 10. My special guest today can be heard every weekend in Little Steven's Underground Garage. He's also a phenomenal bass player. He's played with some incredible artists. You're going to hear more about them. Please welcome Speedie John Carlucci.
Grandpa, how come you drink wine all the time? He goes, what color is it? And I said, red. He goes, what color is your blood? I go, red. He goes, it's good for the blood.
You may have seen that when I interview. It's just fun. I enjoy hearing about when you grew up and stuff like that, and what got you your influences and stuff. That's that silent influences that you don't realize. It could be anything till you're an adult.
That's that I grew up.
Yeah, and yeah. But there's something you listen to. You go, holy cow! Now I know where that. You connect the dots, kind of. I always find that fascinating.
I'm going to throw you a curveball that nobody realizes because of the kind of music I play and stuff. Grand Funk, man!
Yeah. Hell yeah!
I was 10 years old and my sister took me to see Grand Funk at the Fillmore.
Oh, get out.
We had front row seats right in front of the bass player.
Oh,
really? I don't know if you've ever seen them play, but that bass player's a monster.
Oh, yeah.
The way him and the drummer interlock,
yeah,
that's what set the whole thing for me.
Yeah.
That's how come I play so good with people like you.
Yeah, man.
I really pay attention to the drummer because I was trying to be Mel, and I was trying to be Mel to Don.
Yeah. So now, where was that? I was in. You grew up in
New York City.
In New York City.
I grew up in Queens.
You were in Queens. Now, now you mentioned it before, but so for people watching now, just to give an idea of where you grew up, who were some of the other notable musicians, say, that were from your neighborhood, whether earlier on or your school?
Phil Sylvain and Johnny Thunders from the New York Dolls both went to the same high school that I went to.
Yeah.
Jesse Malin and Howie Pyro, where they were in Degeneration. They were from Whitestone, which is like the next neighborhood over.
Yeah.
Walter Lohr from the Heartbreakers lived in Queens. So Russ the Boss from the Dictators lives there, and so does Andy.
Yeah, sure enough.
And the Fleshtones, Peter Zaremba and Keith are all from the neighborhood. I actually went to the same college as Peter. I went to school for visual arts, so did Peter Zaremba went there, and so did Chris Stein. A bunch of other people.
So
those are the people in Queens that I was also really good friends with Tish and Snooki from the Bronx and the Manic Panic. That was the Manic Panic connection. One of my first bands, I was in a band with them and started playing around in New York, CBGBs and places like that. And they introduced me to people like the Dictators and Robert Gordon. Yeah. They got me into the scene so that's how I changed from being like a Grand Funk, Bad Company, typical teenager to all of a sudden being into the punk rock scene.
So now, so growing up now, let's take back to when you were a little kid. What were kind of the first recollections of music, or what one thing maybe that really grabbed you? It was either an album or a live show.
Like everybody of my generation, Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Yeah.
The first movie I ever saw in a movie theater was Hard Day's Night, and that was also the first record I ever bought.
Right.
Then I would buy a bunch of singles, of course, all the Beatles singles. And I had a couple of cousins that were teenagers at the time. They were older.
Yeah.
And one of my cousins went into the Air Force, and I inherited his box of 45s.
Yeah.
And in that box of 45s was Roy Orbison, Everly Brothers, Elvis, all of the first generation rock and roll stuff.
Yeah.
So that opened my eyes to, especially Roy Orbison. I was blown away.
Yeah.
So even though, as time went on, I was still I was always kind of retro, even in the 70s, I was listening to Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley, and some of my friends thought it was a little weird when they were listening to Yes and Emerson, Lake and Palmer. And I was like, I went to see Yes, and I thought great musicians and everything, but I was like, man, but they don't got four on the floor, man. Where's that back? So I always preferred straight ahead rock and roll.
Yeah.
And then I'm in high school, and I discovered the New York Dolls. Like I said, they were from the neighborhood, and we were reading about them in like Circus magazine and stuff. And by now I'm like 14, 15 years old. And I saw an ad in the Village Voice that they were playing in Queens Boulevard at this little club called the Coventry. And so we went. We went over to the Coventry, me and a couple of my buddies. And they were phenomenal. I mean, this was like 1974.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, the drinking age was 18 back then, but they never asked you for an ID. So I was going out to nightclubs when I was 14.
Yeah.
You know, I walked in and the place was packed. I never saw so many good-looking girls in my life.
Yeah.
And they just had so much stage presence and so much charisma that I just, you know, they were one with the audience. You know, I was used to going to concerts where there was a barrier.
Yeah.
Up there and you were down here. But like when they came in, it was like they had a whole entourage with them. And it was like they were the club. They were the crowd.
Yeah.
And like, you know, Johnny Thunders walks right over to the pinball machine and starts playing pinball. We're standing right next to him going, I just saw the guy in Creed magazine. Now he's standing next to me playing pinball.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, it's cool. And there was also a really interesting night because the opening band was the Dictators.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I got to see the Dictators and the Dolls on the same night, and they both blew me away.
Yeah.
And the other band on the bill was Sniper, Joey Ramone's first band.
Yeah, wow.
So, like, you know, I'm like 14 years old and it's hitting me over the head.
Yeah.
So then a few, maybe, you know, I don't remember if it was a few months later or if it was next year, but I see another ad saying New York Dolls at the Coventry.
Yeah.
So I call my friends. We decide to go. I get there, and when we walk up, we could see that it says in big letters, New York Dolls, and then it says ex-New York Dolls, Johnny Thunders, Heartbreakers, new band. It was their first gig.
Wow.
We just stumbled
on their first gig, yeah.
And I went in there, and it wasn't really that crowded. And they were a three-piece band. Thunder still had long hair. Richard Hell was playing bass. Walter hadn't joined the band yet. They were a three-piece band. And they kind of blew me away. I mean, Richard Hell had the punk look that nobody else had. The other guy still had the long hair. Richard Hell had a suit jacket on. We took it off. His shirt was shredded. Like, I was shit, you know. And the songs were amazing. And years later, I talked to Walter Lauren, and he told me he was there that night too. And that's when they asked him to join the band.
Wow.
So it was a pretty interesting night. And the opening band that night was the Ramones.
Oh, wow.
I had never heard of them before.
Right, yeah.
They didn't have any records out yet. They were just like, they were really like green, you know. They were like sloppy. And they were really loud, and the PA was not so great. So I thought they were playing one song for 20 minutes because all the songs had the same three chords. Well, you heard, what do they want?
Yeah.
Then they just threw their instruments on the floor, Joey threw the mic down, and they just stormed off the stage. I'm like, what the hell was that?
Yeah.
It's so weird. Like, I was telling my friends about it. They go, no way. I go, yeah, it was so weird. They all looked the same, and they were all wearing leather jackets, and they were like screaming stuff about chainsaws and shit. So we see the Village Voice a couple of weeks later, and they're playing at some funky bar called CBGB's, and that's how I discovered CBGB's. And of course, when I went to that gig, the Talking Heads were opening. And
get out!
And there's this like freaky looking dude singing "Psycho Killer."
Yeah.
Oh my God, this is nuts.
Oh man!
After that, I was hooked. I went every weekend to CBGB's or Max's.
Wow.
And then eventually, I started playing, you know, with bands, and I had a band in my neighborhood with some friends, you know, the typical guys, and that were into like I said, Bad Company and Joe Wall, stuff like that.
And you're about 14, roughly.
Yeah, 14.
Somewhere around there. Yeah.
And then I had a band with some of my buddies in high school. And none of us could sing, and they thought they could sing.
Yeah.
So without telling them, I put an ad in the newspaper for a singer. I get an answer from Tish and Snooki, the two Manic Panic girls. And that's fine. They had just been in Blondie. They were like playing with Blondie as backup singers, and then they went on their own. And so they came over to my house. I lived in Queens, and we rehearsed in the basement. my mom and dad would be upstairs watching Kojak on TV.
Yeah.
I go to pick them up in my dad's 1964 Comet station wagon.
Yeah.
And it was right during the Son of Sam era.
Oh,
And I don't know if you remember that, but Son of Sam was shooting people with, he was shooting girls with shoulder-length brown hair. That was like his thing.
Yeah.
So I go to the train station, and these two girls I never met before come walking down the elevated train station stairs with pink and purple Afro wigs on. Hot pants.
Yeah.
Like everybody in Queens was like, what's
going on?
They come down with their total Bronx accents and like, hey, how you doing? I'm Tisha Snooki and blah, blah, blah. And then I was like blown away. They were just so different from like anything in my neighborhood.
Sure, man.
So I thought they were great. And then the guys in my band were like freaked out big time. And we did like 1 or 2 shows. Then one by one, each guy in the band was like, oh, I'm kind of busy. I got stuff going on. And so eventually we'd bring other people in to replace them. But that's how I got into the whole scene. And
yeah,
it was pretty cool. So then at the time, Snooki was dating Robert Gordon, and he was still in the Tough Darts.
Yeah.
So I picked the girls up from the train station. They come over to my house to rehearse, and Robert would take the train from the city, and he'd sit upstairs watching Kojak with my mom and dad.
Wow, yeah.
You know, or coffee and shooting the breeze all night with my mom and dad.
Wow,
and then I'd drive them back to the Bronx, to Snooki's house in the Bronx.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I did this, like, all the time. So I became friendly with him, you know, and he's the one who taught me about rockabilly. I mean, I didn't know anything about rockabilly. To me, like, you know, 50s music was, you know, 50s music. It was like I said, it was Chuck Berry, Little Richard. I didn't know anything about rockabilly. So he's going to turn me on to stuff like Johnny Burnett and the Rock and Roll Trio. And so, like, later on that year, I went to Boston with some friends to go to a Yankees-Red Sox game. And we went around record shopping.
Yeah.
And I was flipping through the records of some, you know, Goodwill or something. And I found an original copy of the Johnny Burnett and the Rock and Roll Trio album on Coral Records, which is now, it's like a $5,000 album.
Wow, yeah.
It had Train Kept a Rolling on it, had, you know, Tear It Up, all that stuff. And so here I am, like, you know, like in 1976, 1977, totally, like, schooled in rockabilly.
Yeah.
And then the freaking Rock Cats come over from England, and then the Stray Cats start happening.
Right, yeah.
So it was really cool. It was like the natural progression from punk rock. Because punk rock tore it all down, and then right after that, the rockabilly stuff started.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, let's get it right this time. Let's rebuild it back from the beginning.
Yeah.
It was pretty cool. It was a pretty cool thing. Then, of course, it got crazy, and you know, everything changes and goes into a left field. But at the very beginning, when it was all fresh, it was really exciting.
I didn't know. Yeah, you were hanging out with Robert Gordon. Yeah, that's pretty cool, man.
Oh yeah,
because I mean,
I hadn't seen him in like 20 years, and he played at the All-Star Lanes in Eagle Rock, you know, over my old neighborhood.
Yeah.
So I went, and I walked up to him and I go, "Hey, Robert, you remember me?" And he looks at me. I go, "Queens, the guy in the band with Tish and Snooki." He's like, "Oh my God!"
Yeah. Yeah.
Funny. And what's even funnier is that at that time, my buddy was playing guitar in his band.
Oh, really?
I ended up being in a band with George Friend from Detroit, Michigan.
Uh-huh.
He's a hell of a guitar player. I don't know if you know him.
No, I don't know. Yeah.
You should check him out. He's amazing.
Yeah.
So it was just, everything comes around, you know?
Yeah. So now when, so that's, you said that's around mid 70s, kind of rolling into 78 or so. Tell me about when did that all transpire?
79. I opened up the Soho Weekly News one day.
Yeah.
And there's a cover story about this band called the Speedies, and it was like 4 pages long. It was talking about how they were teenagers playing rock and roll to teenagers, that they were still in high school, that they were phenomenal, that they were amazing. And it was like people from like Trouser Press magazine were writing the article, you know. It's like people that I respected, you know. And I was like, whoa, I gotta check these guys out. And it said right in the article, they don't even have a bass player. They just didn't want to wait and bother. They just were ready to go out and rock and roll. So they went out without a bass player, And then I said, and every once in a while, Kenny Aronson sits in on bass playing with them. And I was like, if Kenny Aronson sits in with them on bass, I don't know if you know Kenny Aronson, but he's played with everybody. He played with Rick Derringer, he played with Edgar Winter, he played with Bob Dylan, he's played with, he's now in the Yardbird reunion.
Yeah, wow.
He's in the New York Dolls, he played with Joan Jett, I mean, he's played with everybody.
Yeah.
So I was like, if these guys are good enough for him, man, I got to go check them out. So coincidentally, I kind of collect basses. I don't know if you noticed that.
Oh yeah.
And I saw somebody was selling a Vox teardrop bass in the Village Voice, and I had an appointment to meet the guy. And his rehearsal studio was like around the corner from Max's Kansas City, and the Speedies were playing there. It was like a Wednesday night. So I go to see the bass. I love it. I buy it. And then I go to see the Speedies, and I'm not going to leave the bass in the car.
Yeah.
Because I had a station wagon, it's no trunk or nothing.
Bring
the bass into Max's with me. I'm walking around all night with a Vox bass in a case. So I see the Speedies playing, and they were phenomenal. I mean, the crowd, it was packed. The people were totally going crazy. So I wait, and after the gig, they come walking off the stage, and I see the drummer. And I corner him. I said, dude, you guys need a bass player. I'm him. He's like, and he sees me standing there with a bass. He's like, you can't come up and play with us now. You got to learn the songs. And I'm like, no. I just bought this. And it wasn't meaning right now.
Yeah.
Let's get together and jam.
Yeah.
Right? And so we exchanged phone numbers. And a couple of days later, I took the train out to Brooklyn and I went to his house and played with them. And it just clicked. And the thing is, now I'm 21, maybe 22. The drummer was 15. The guitar players were 16. And I'm like, I don't want to tell I'm an old guy.
Yeah.
21, going to be 22. So I lied and told them that I was like 19 or something like that. And they thought I was. And so then I get in the band and we start playing and things are really happening. And we're talking, and I was telling them about, oh yeah, I saw the Stooges on New Year's Eve one night, and they're like, you saw the Stooges? How the hell old are you? I'm like, all right, I'm not 19, I'm 22.
Yeah.
But it worked out good because I was the only one that was actually of legal age. So, I mean, there was no problem in New York, but if we played New Jersey or Philadelphia, places like that, they ID'd at those places. And so I was the only one that was actually allowed to hang out in the club.
Right.
And I'd go in and take care of the business and sign the contracts and get the money. And they'll all sit in the van and we'd play, and then they'd run back out in the van.
Yeah.
It was funny.
Yeah. So where, as far as how many recordings did you guys put out?
We only put out 2 singles.
2 singles.
Yeah. We recorded more stuff that we didn't put out initially. And then in about 2007, I started getting emails and stuff from this power pop label called Radio Heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
They said they really like our stuff and they were going to put together this power pop weekend festival in Brooklyn. Do we have any unreleased material? And I'm like, just so happens we do.
Yeah.
So, of course, I called the drummer, and he's like, oh, yeah, I got the master tape sitting in my closet here for 20 years.
Yeah.
So I called up a friend of mine who's an engineer, and he goes, don't play them. Don't do anything to them. We'll send them to me. I got a process. I know a guy. We'll get them baked. And that they have this process with the old tapes like that. They bake them and then they digitize them immediately.
Right.
And so we had amazing 24 track. So we were able to remix them and then, pull up the drums and make the bass sound better and get the background vocals in there. And, we even overdubbed a couple of things like throw in a little bit of a clean sounding guitar because the guitar player back then used a phaser on everything and it was just like overkill. Yeah. So we cleaned them up and we put them out on Radio Heartbeat and then we flew to New York and we did this reunion show.
Wow.
And, we were headlining over Nicky and the Corvettes and the Neighborhoods and I think Baby Shakes and and like a whole bunch of different power pop bands from different eras of time. And it was a trip because I hadn't played in Brooklyn in years, hadn't been back in years. And, you know, my mom's there, my wife's there, all my ex-girlfriends are there, all my high school buddies are there. And it was just so weird. It was so much fun. And so then afterwards, we all went over to Well Hop and had our Chinese food like we did after every Speedies gig.
Wow. So now after the Speedies thing, then
I met a girl who was from California, and we were dating and living cross country, and then she came to live with me in New York. And at the time, I was working at some day job doing a little bit of computer accounting stuff. And the Speedies had broken up, and I was in between bands. Me and the drummer from the Speedies did a record with this band called Racer X. It was like a one-off record, and it came out in France. And it was a little bit too poppy for me, so I was like, I don't want to do that,
Right.
And then I went out to California for Christmas with my girlfriend at the time to visit her parents, and she modeled for Vidal Sassoon. And she was doing a modeling session, and they were cutting her hair and doing all of this, photographs and stuff. And I was there all day, and I met just about everybody in the company. And one guy that was there was the corporate accountant, and he's like, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "Well, I work for this market research company, and I do a lot of data entry and figuring out running reports and blah 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 blah." And he looked at me and he goes, "You know how to use a computer?" And this is like 1980. And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I'm pretty fast." And he's like, "Because we're going computerized soon here. I don't know shit about computers. I need an assistant." He goes, how much would you need? And I just jokingly threw out a number that was twice as much money as I was making in New York.
Sure, man.
Yeah, fine, okay. He goes, "We'll pay for your move and everything."
Wow.
I was like, "Serious?" And so I went back, and I was like, I didn't think it was serious. And then he kept calling. And then I was like, "Oh, all right, let's try it, So I put all my records and guitars and stuff on a moving van, moved out to California, and we lived with her mom in Monterey Park for like a month.
Mm-hmm.
We got an apartment in Park La Brea. And the connection with Joe and Jen is, they had just moved to New York, and I knew they were from LA. So I said, "Do you know anybody in LA that I might want to play with?" And the guitar player was Eric Gamble, and him and the bass player Gary had just left Rick Elrick's band and joined Joan Jett. So they gave me Rick Elrick's phone number. And so I called him up, and he was the first person I played with in LA. And I'd been in bands. I mean, Rick and I became really good friends. I played with him in the early 80s, and then I played with him again. I was in his band up till the time that he was diagnosed with cancer and died in 2000. So that was my insertion into the LA scene.
Right.
I met everybody in LA. And then a couple of years later, some of the Fuzztones guys moved out to LA and looked me up and said they wanted to reform the band in LA. So I ended up hooking up with the Fuzztones, and we're all a bunch of ex-New Yorkers all living in LA. And then we get signed in England and then tour Europe like 15 times and can't get arrested in LA. I mean, it's like we're playing festivals to like thousands of people over there, and we're playing a Coconut Teaser to like 100 people. So weird, it was like such a weird change, but we did.
That was always wild that upon meeting you the last couple of years, when we were talking about Fuzztones and how my old band, the Leonards, we were always, you and I already discussed this, how we were always in the same kind of ballpark, but we never crossed paths. And we were always looking for other bands, and because we were kind of these Detroit-looking guys, MC5, doing stuff like that. And at the time,
the Leonards, right?
Yeah.
But I used to go see you. My buddy Dave Drury.
Drury
with the bald guy. Is that
Sloke. That was Sloke.
Oh, that guy. Yeah. So he took me to see them a bunch of times, and I thought they were great. I think I played at Raji's, maybe.
Yeah, Raji's.
And that's another reason why we probably never played together. We were not a Raji's thing. I had a situation happen at Raji's.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
The Bernie guy that stood at the door.
Yeah, Bernie. Yeah.
Well, he was crazy. One day, the Fuzztones had already gotten a record deal, so
yeah.
I was friends with the Miracle Workers.
Right, Miracle Workers.
That put me on the guest list to come see them down there. And this Bernie guy, for some reason, didn't like me. I don't know, maybe Rudy slept with his girlfriend or something. But I had a lot of that. People would just not like me, and I had no idea why.
Right.
And so I was on the guest list, and I'm standing there, and it's kind of cold out. It's like, one of those winter days where it's like breezy and stuff. And I was with a couple of girls or something. He keeps letting other people go in front of me. I'm like, dude, I'm on the guest list, and my friends are gonna. I hear them starting up. They're playing right now, and he just says to me, "Shut up and get back in line, asshole."
Oh, holy cow!
Like, what the fuck, man? What the fuck? Who are you calling an asshole?
Yeah.
That's all I said was that, and he had me in a headlock a second later.
Holy cow!
He just started choking me.
Jesus.
And so what's crazy about this was at that very moment, they're just coincidentally right across the street, there were two cops at a DUI checkpoint was set up. So they look over and they see this guy choking me. So they come running over with their billy clubs and guns out, and he runs into the club. So then they come over, and then like the Dobbs comes out, and they say, "Oh, wait a minute, it's all a misunderstanding. Blah 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 blah. What's going on?" And so I tell him what happened. Meanwhile, Bernie ran out the back door, got in his car, and took off. So the cops were like, went in to look for him. They couldn't find him. And so they look at me, and they say, all right, he's gone. What do you want to do? And so I looked at Dobbs, and I go, me and everybody on this line, in now for free. Give me a couple of drinks for my girls.
Yeah.
So that happened, and I never played there.
Yeah, there was
just weird. It's like it was just really weird. Until this day, I don't know why.
So now you guys then would be playing. You said the Teaser and like Scream probably in place.
We played at Bar Deluxe a lot. I mean, it was before Bar Deluxe, English Acid, and Scream, and then I became friends with Ian Astbury from the Cult.
Yeah, right.
I was standing next to him and his girlfriend at Scream one night, and I had seen them at all our gigs, and I was like, my imagination, but have you guys been like coming to all our gigs? Because we love you guys, man. We saw you in England, we saw you here, blah blah blah. And he was in a situation where like the band was kind of in between management companies or something, so they weren't doing anything. He was living in LA, and they were practicing for their next record. But he was bored. So he started hanging out with us. And he came to all of our sound checks and gigs. And he's like, can I jump up on stage with you guys? So we started working out songs with him. We started like throwing in like, Down on the Street by Iggy and MC5 songs and, Born to Be Wild, stuff like that. So we'd bring him on as like a special guest at the end of the show. And we did this for a while. And then we actually recorded some of it. And a couple of them came out as a picture disc in England. So we recorded with him, and he's the one who got us signed to Beggars Banquet Records in England.
Wow, yeah.
He's like, I really think you guys are great. If you go to England, I get all the right people down to see you, and they'll sign your band. And I had never played in England before. We had gone over a bunch of times to play Europe, but we hadn't played England. We get to England, and we're playing at this place called the I can't remember the place. It was a small place, but it was packed, and we had a great show. And then this girl comes up afterwards, and she goes, I want to introduce you myself. My name's Leslie. I work for Beggars Banquet. She goes, we've been following you guys around. We've been to all your shows. I go, all of them? She starts laughing. Oh, yeah, those 3 people in Liverpool? That was us. You guys are so rock and roll. That was so freaking real. That we love you guys and we want to sign you.
Wow.
I was like, really? So we met with the own. Everybody was there. They brought us drinks and this and that. And then I was like, okay, well, this is our last show. We're going back to L.A. And so they said, okay, give me your fax number. And I had a day job, so I gave them the fax number to my day job. And they start faxing over contracts. And so I get in early, first thing in the morning, because the time difference.
Yeah, right.
Okay, all right. And I'm waiting by the fax machine. I get all of these record company things. I bring them home. I go over them. I don't know. I don't like this paragraph. Blah, blah, blah. No, we want the rights to come back to us like in a year, 2 years, blah, blah, blah. So we scratch all the shit out and send it back to them. And this went on for a couple of weeks. And then we got a record deal.
Wow.
And then they ended up negotiating an American deal and sold us to RCA in America. So I was like, hey, Mom, I'm on the same label as Elvis.
Yeah. So what year then roughly was that? Because trying to think when you talk about...
We started in 86. We played around. We had a German record label and a small indie label.
Yeah.
And right away, like in 87, we started touring Europe.
Yeah.
We didn't do the English thing that I just told you about until 89. That's when we put out our record in 89.
Yeah.
And then by 90, it got to the point where the band was like, we hated each other so much.
Sure.
That me and the guitar player and the keyboard player were doing things like, I'll pay my own train travel. I remember one time we did this trip to Paris. We were in Italy and we were supposed to drive to Paris, and it was like, oh God, I'm not driving for like 18 hours through the mountains and shit. So we took the train. We get to Paris, and then it's me and Jason and Jordan, and so we all look at each other like, okay, where are we playing tonight? I don't know. I thought you knew. Like, where's the hotel?
Yeah.
I don't know. We had no idea where we were playing. We had no idea where we were staying.
Yeah.
We're sitting across the street from the Louvre at a coffee shop. Jordan and Jason get into a fight because we all thought he knew it. We were counting on him to have everything. So he runs away, takes off. There's me and Jordan sitting there like, what the fuck are we going to do? I have no idea where we're playing.
Right.
So I start going through my phone book, and I was like, hey, remember the last time we were here? Remember that girl, Julie? I go, let me give her a call, see if she's around.
Yeah.
Get to the phone booth, I call her up, she answers the phone. And I'm like, so Julie, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I'm getting ready for your show tonight. I'm ironing the dress I'm going to wear. I'm like, you know where we're playing?
You know where we're
I go, we're kind of like lost and we kind of need some help here.
Yeah.
I go, me and Jordan are like, we're over by the Louvre. I'll tell you what, could you meet me in front of the Mona Lisa in an hour and take us to our gig?
Yeah.
So there's me and Jordan standing in front of the Mona Lisa like a couple of schmucks.
Yeah.
By the way, the Mona Lisa is only like this big. I mean, you see it and you think it's a big picture. It's like this big.
It's tiny, yeah.
So we meet her and she takes us to the venue. And then we find out it's an early show. We're playing at 7 o'clock at night. We're like, 7? Thank God we got here when we did, right?
Yeah.
So we're standing there and everybody goes, so where's Jason? I'm like, I don't know. We got mad at him because he didn't know we were playing and he took off and, we haven't seen him since. So they're like, okay, you're going on in 5 minutes. I go, but Jason's not here. Keyboard player's not here. That's our whole sound, we got the 60 keyboard thing.
Yeah.
So they tell us, you have to go on now. And we're like, okay. So we go on without him. And we're playing without him. And there's the keyboard just sitting there empty. And then I'm playing and I see all this commotion going on in the club. I'm looking. And I see Jason running with like 2 bouncers chasing him.
Yeah.
He comes running up to the stage and jumps up on the stage, and they were coming up to get him. I'm like, no, it's okay. He's in the band. And he starts like hitting the keyboard, and they're like, oh, he really is in the band. They thought he was lying. They go, no, you're not in the band. The band's on stage already.
Yeah. Wow, that's man, oh man, you guys, there's some wild stories you guys got.
It gets even crazier.
Yeah.
So after all of this stuff, we go back to the hotel. And I was like, I never saw the Mona Lisa. I mean, I never saw the Eiffel Tower.
Right.
I want to go to the Eiffel Tower. And the rest of the guys did that 15-hour drive. They're like, "Fuck you, man! No, we're not taking."
Yeah.
And we were like, "Come on, man! I'm in Paris. I'm wide awake. I want to go see the Eiffel Tower." So we talked the roadie into stealing the keys from the bus driver, the tour driver guy, who was snoring out like a light. So me, Jordan, Jason, and our two roadies steal our own tour bus and go over to the Mona Lisa. I mean, the Eiffel Tower.
Eiffel Tower.
Yeah, and we had been on the road now for a while, and the van was full of alcohol bottles that we would take backstage. It's like they give you so much you can't possibly drink it all. So we had like bottles of Jägermeister rolling around back there, and Jack Daniels and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So we take a bottle of Jägermeister with us, and we're sitting underneath the Eiffel Tower doing a toast, like. We get a little bit more, tipsy than we should have. So then we get back in the van, and Rhodey's driving, and it's a big, huge van, and it's right-hand drive, right? Because it came from England.
Yeah.
So he's like really not doing too well, figuring out which way to turn and stuff.
Yeah.
And this guy in this little freaking a Citroen or one of those little French cars.
Yeah.
On the right of us. Gary took off his whole front end of his car.
Oh, no.
And so we're stopped there, and this guy's screaming in French. We don't know what the hell he's saying. And then all of a sudden, we hear, and the French police pull up.
Oh, no.
They're talking with the guy, and they're talking with us. And so we let the roadie handle the whole thing. We're standing there. And then, like, all of a sudden, everything seems cool, and the cops drive away. And then the guy's still yelling at us and stuff. But the cops drove away. They were convinced that everything was fine.
Yeah.
And we get back in the bus, and we drive away, and we go to our roadie Gary. Like, what happened? He goes, "Oh, I took care of it." I go, "How much is it going to cost us?" He goes, "Oh, it ain't going to cost us anything." I go, "Let me see the police report." Okay, name of driver, Carl Molden. Address, 77 Sunset Strip. So we go back. We parked the van in the same spot it was in, but one of the hubcaps had come off, so I had the hubcap with me, and we were like, "Okay, we gotta get the hubcap back on," and it was bent and it wouldn't go back on, so we just placed it there.
Yeah.
So we go upstairs. And it's time for breakfast already. Like the other guys are all up having breakfast. So we come running in and they think we're just coming down for breakfast, but we're just coming home. So we're like, "Oh, okay, I'll have some coffee." And they're like, "Oh, we must leave in 5 minutes, 10 minutes. They're like, "Oh, all right." So we go up and grab our stuff, and we're sitting in the van. And then the bus driver comes out and gets in the van and starts it up and starts driving. And all of a sudden the hubcap goes flying off of it. And that was the only thing that was wrong with the car. It was the only thing, right? So he gets out and he picks up the hubcap and it's all bent. And he's like scratching his head, like, "What the fuck?" We were all
yeah.
Half the band didn't even know this. We didn't even tell any of them about it until we were back in LA. For all I know, there's a warrant out for Carl Molden's arrest
in Paris. so that, it's funny. What's interesting is how many different bands you've played with, and then upon getting to meet you finally a few years ago, after we had been crossing paths, know the same people, like Dave Drury.
Another sad casualty.
Yeah, it was a sad time. But also, for anyone looking on eBay, Dave, of course, was a massive collector. As you know, he always had fly posters, and he had the CDs and stuff on eBay. I'll have to put the link down, but Bob
Blackbird selling.
Yeah,
his wife. Yeah,
there's a wealth of stuff online for sale. That the money goes towards Dave's family, his wife, and towards cost of medical or whatever. But I'll have to post that on here for Dave.
Yeah. I met them. I met the Moberlys in New York in the '70s.
Wow, you guys go back that far. Yeah.
I met Jim. I remember specifically meeting Jim.
Yeah.
And then they had come to L.A., so they looked me up in L.A. and we became friends. I'm still friends with Jim.
Yeah.
I saw him in Seattle last year. We went up to Seattle and hung out with him, and then he came down for the memorial for Dave. It was at Viva Cantina. And I went up and played like 5 songs with the Moberlys that night.
Yeah.
It was fun.
Yeah.
But I got some great stories of Dave, and he had 4 of the same car.
Yeah.
It was like a '64 Plymouth.
Right.
None of them drove. They were all parts cars, but he was like, "I'm going to fix this one up, and it's going to be really great one day."
Yeah.
And he never got around to it, and then finally, the guy who owned the house was like, "You got to get these cars out of here, man."
Yeah.
So he ended up having to sell them, and then years later, I'm at a car show with him, and there's beautiful, same model of his car, and he's looking at it, he's like, "That's the fucking guy I sold it to. That's my car." Some guy had totally tricked it out and restored it. And it was like unbelievable. The guy had put like thousands and thousands into it.
Sure. Yeah.
So it was cool. At least one of those cars made it.
Made it. Yeah. Tell me also some of the other bands that up till now, actually, prior to leaving LA, you were played with a lot of incredible artists over the years.
I played with Sylvain.
Right.
He lived in LA for a while and looked me up, and I ended up playing in his band. I'm on the album Sleep Baby Doll, which was re-released as New York's a Go-Go. And we had Frankie Infante from Blondie playing on
Blondie.
That. And the Blondie connection. I mean, I go way back with Clem. Clem produced the second Speedies record.
Oh, wow.
For like 40 years. So I've occasionally ended up in bands with him, and he had a band called the International Swingers with Glenn Matlock from the Sex Pistols and James Stevenson from Generation X, the second version of Gen X, and Glenn Matlock couldn't come back to LA all the time, so I sat in as the bass player when he was stuck in England. So I started playing with those guys for a while, and that was a lot of fun. But I had played with Clem earlier. He did some of the stuff with Syl, and also he played with Gary from the International Swingers and Danny Harvey, the rockabilly guy. We had a band called the Honey Dippers, and we had a house band gig at the Lava Lounge. We used to play there all the time.
Right.
And I had a gig there with Dave Drury in a band called the Loose Cannons.
Right, I remember hearing that.
It was really funny because I was like, at that time I was like almost the house bass player of the Lava Lounge. I played with the Sprague Brothers, I played with Honey Dippers, and I played with the Loose Cannons. And we played there at the Loose Cannons, and Michelle was like, "You know what? Your guitar player and your singer, they were trying to pick up all my friends. They're being a little too pushy, and I got to fire you guys. You can't play here again, right?" So she fires us and hires the Sprague Brothers.
Oh, wow! Yeah.
Next week, I'm there at my same bass amp. I'm tuning up, and she walks up and says, "Hello, I fired you guys last week." And I'm like, "Well, that was my other band."
Yeah, Sprague Brothers. Yeah.
No, I'm playing with the Sprague Brothers tonight. And then the following week, I'm there playing with the Honey Dippers. And she goes, "Who do you not play with?" And it was like I was there like all the time. It was hysterical.
Talking to Manfred last week, and you guys were in a band as well. You, Laura, and Manfred, and
we had the Odd Squad.
Yeah, the Odd Squad.
We had Max on drums he was the drummer from Lords of Altamont.
Yeah.
And Kenny, the guitar player, that was also in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Wow.
The band I had that got me into the Underground Garage. They basically we had the coolest song in the world, and that's how they first heard of me. But I had been a fan of the Underground Garage since for like 10 years. Right. We had that Manic Panic hair salon in LA, and I had a PA in there, and 24/7 we played the Underground Garage. Right. And I guess word got out, and when they needed a DJ, I had been playing with Palmyra at the time, and Manfred threw our names in the hat. And so I had never even talked on a microphone before in my life. I had no idea what I sounded like. And Kid Leo called me up and asked me if I'd be interested because they saw my Facebook pages and liked my posts and knew of my bands and blah, blah, blah. So I go, all right, well, I'll do a demo. So my buddy from the Fuzztones, Jordan Tarlow, he's married to Martha Quinn from MTV. And she at the time had an 80s show on Sirius XM.
Right.
So he had a really professional studio set up in Malibu where he did her show. I called him up and I told him about this offer I got. And he goes, come on over. I'll do a demo with you. So he coached me on Martha's gear and Martha's equipment. And I did a fake radio show.
Yeah.
It came out phenomenal. And they were blown away. And they offered me the thing. And then Palmyra calls me up. They offered her a gig too, and like we were in the band together.
Yeah,
we all got hired on the same day, and then Zaremba got hired the same day, and Rich Russo, and it was like really crazy because like back in the Speedies days, we used to play with the Flesh Tones all the time.
Yeah.
It was crazy. We're coming back full circle. It's like the Speedies would go on either before or after the Flesh Tones, and now I'm going on after Zaremba's radio show.
Yeah,
and Palmyra's coming on right after me. It was like so cool.
Were you and Laura, were you sitting in playing with Palmyra when they would come out on a West Coast, or were you guys would go back
brought her
east?
Out here, yeah.
You brought her out, yeah.
I brought her out. I was, it was like after the thing we did with Manfred kind of fell apart because, I had also problems with the Kiss Kiss Bang Bang guys, and they were in the same band with me at Manfred, and then Manfred couldn't record, and we were like doing cover songs, and we wanted to be an original band. We wanted to do something different.
Yeah, you just had different things going. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was listening to Palmyra on the radio, and I go, man, this girl's incredible. Her songs are so good. And then I was reading that she had just done a tour of Sweden with that band Stupidity, backing her up.
Yeah.
Well, that's a great idea. I should get a band together out here and bring her out here. We'll be her backup band. So I contacted her on Facebook and threw that idea out to her.
Yeah.
And she was like, had no idea who I was at the point. And so she starts checking around, and then she saw I played with Sylvain, and I know Clem, and she went over to Manitoba, and Manitoba goes, oh yeah, he's cool. I've known him since the 70s and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So she agrees to do this. And so I'm like thinking to myself, okay, now who's available that's really good? And I had just been in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang with Ricky playing drums. And I'm like, Ricky's my first choice, man. And so then I'm like, well, who can I get for guitar? And we had just done a couple of gigs with Brain Spoon playing with us. And Michelle playing James Williamson wah-wah, so badass. So I'm like, well, how about Michelle? And so she agrees to do it. So then I realized, oh, wait a minute. I'm in an old girl band, and I'm not a girl. So I was like, so what? They're all the best people for the gig. Yeah. I mean, I put any of these guys up against any dudes. They rock just as hard.
Yeah.
Myra came out, and we did a whole West Coast tour and recorded a single, and it went great.
Wow.
We did it a couple of times. But then the next time we did it, we used different people because, Ricky and Michelle were in the Darts at that point, and they were on tour, so they couldn't do it. So that's how we got Melanie involved from the Muffs and the Pandoras. And we got Hillary, the Pandora's the drummer, played drums for us. And so we did another tour with them. And that's also kind of what kick-started the Coolies thing that Melanie...
Yeah, that was like 2 years ago when I came to see you guys at Maui Sugar Mill. Yeah. I saw you guys at that show. And that's so that was kind of the start of the Coolies. Yeah, we used to do shows with the Pandoras, and I think a show or two with the Muffs when they were just starting out with their first drummer. And
I did it from the Pandoras days back in when I was in the Fuzztones. We did a lot of shows with the Pandoras. Yeah. And in fact, another not to be too morbid, but I was actually I was pallbearer at Paula's funeral.
Oh, yeah.
I knew Paula pretty well.
Yeah, yeah.
It's sad. I mean, we're getting to
Yeah.
that age.
Yeah, yeah. Things happen. Yeah, and yeah, they were a blast. We one of the first shows I did. There's this big theater down in Anaheim, and that was the first time I knew of got to see the Pandoras.
Oh, was it Fender's Ballroom?
No, it was with Dramarama, and it was at that big Celebrity Theater. Do you remember that place? It was in the Round. It was a pretty cool place. But anyway, I got to meet Dramarama and the Pandoras. I became buddies with Jesse, the drummer from Dramarama.
I met them through Sylvain because he did a couple of songs with them when I was in this band. They were playing at like the Irvine Amphitheater or something.
Yeah, he was such. Yeah, I remember because he knew we were new, and he was like, "Hey, man, he was telling me little things, to know." You know what I mean? Like as a
like a mentor.
Yeah, you were like,
I had that with Scott from the Dictators. He was my mentor.
Oh yeah.
And also Kenny Aronson, the guy that I was telling you about that had sat in with the Speedies. He lives in Brooklyn, around the corner from our drummer Alan.
Yeah.
And so I would go over his house and pick his brains about bass amps and things like that.
Yeah.
And hadn't seen Kenny in years, and right before we left LA, he was playing in the new Yardbirds thing.
Yeah.
And they played in Pasadena at the Rose Theater. And so I went to see him, and it was like I hadn't seen him in like 20 years, and it was just like we just saw each other yesterday.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was really fun. I was really happy that you play with us there. Was because I had known you prior to that forever, but we never officially like met, or you know what I mean. It's weird how the scene is so small yet it's so expanded, and then so getting to play.
Band. You had some really great gigs.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun. That was a blast.
Especially
I'm glad.
The winery, especially when they would leave the bottles of wine unattended.
Yeah, that was a blast. I finally get to to play with you, and
I work really well with drummers, and I'm like a parrot. I hear something and I can play it. Like it's like really weird. It's like I don't really have to practice stuff too much. I hear it, I listen to it, and I play it, and then it's in there.
Yeah.
In fact, I got a phone call from the Ghastly Ones one day. They were in London. The bass player and their drummer had a fist fight.
Oh boy!
And they were like, the bass player walked down the band, and we're headlining in Seattle and Portland next weekend, and we don't know anybody that could do this on such short notice but you. I mean, I had to learn like a whole set of instrumentals.
Yeah.
They all sound the same.
Yeah.
Which one's Rocket Man and which one's Kryptonite or whatever. It's like there's no vocal cues. That's really hard to do.
Yeah. Oh yeah, sure.
I learned their whole trip. I learned the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I went up there and played those two shows, and it was great.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of thing I can do that kind of thing. And I've done it before, where I can just jump in and do stuff. Like, in fact, if you guys ended up, over here and your bass player got sick, I could do the show.
Oh yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, you still know the stuff. Yeah, we're hoping to get out there once everything calms down.
We were just starting to get our foot in the door. There's pretty good. There's a lot of nice clubs here, and it's a real rock and roll town.
Yeah. And
we have a lot of friends down in Atlanta. We met them all either through the Woggles or just the people that I knew.
Yeah.
And so we were starting to get our foot in the door, and then all this stuff happened. In fact, we just recorded an album with the Cyclone Furies out of
right.
Chrissy Flatt was the singer. She used to have a band called New Mystery Girl. They had a cool song.
Yeah, I remember that.
Well, on our way across the country, we stopped in Austin for a week, and I recorded an album with them, and Laura did too. And we had a whole tour set up. We had to cancel it because of COVID.
Yeah.
I was like so bummed because I had never played in. The Speedies and we're big on the Northeast, and we played the Northeast and we played the Midwest, and we played California. So all of my bands we played all those places, but I don't play in the South.
Yeah. You know,
never played in the South.
Yeah, that's wild. It's just fun for me and the guys. The fact that through the Underground Garage, we got to meet. Got to meet you. We got to just meet a whole ton of different people.
And you got to play Yankee Stadium.
Got to play Yankee Stadium, man. But what was cool was when you were playing with us and playing over at the place in Burbank.
Oh yeah,
Joe's.
Yeah, I love that place.
And then Drew came to check you out, see you, and say hi, and we got to be acquainted with him. And he's been a loyal supporter of us, and
he's a great guy.
And and his show's a blast. Your show's a blast. Everybody, it's just. I was telling this to Manfred too. Was just that the Underground Garage and all the old timers, the guys that have been around, and they know how to from Stevie to Kid to you guys. You've all been there, you know what I mean? And
we're all musicians.
Yeah,
except for Kid Leo, but Kid Leo, he's a legend. I mean, he's the guy that first got Bruce Springsteen on the radio.
Yeah, and
we're all we all know and we all love rock and roll. We're all fans. So when we're not playing, we're fans, and so we're always looking for cool stuff, and I get tons of stuff sent to me, but we don't, a lot of it wouldn't fit,
Yeah, sure,
but, you guys got really catchy, great tunes, and I just love being, there's a few things that I brought to the station that they've become regular stuff, like me and Manfred brought in the Muffs, me and Paul Myra brought in the Jackets, and some of these bands, like we all like, the best way to get Steven to play something is that we all hit him with it from all angles. It's like, hey, Manfred just gave me this last week. Oh, Paul Myra gave me this morning. When they hear it from all of us, then they like, oh, okay. There's a lot of great stuff out there. There's so many great bands.
Well, you're on your show. You have your songs that should be huge, special, which is really cool because you're giving voice to a song, whether it's been overlooked or whatever, because there's so many great tunes that not everything can be.
This morning's tune?
Yeah.
I played the rebel kind from Desi and Billy.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I mean, when I was, I played that song in a punk band in the 70s. You know how people used to like to get weird songs and turn them into punk songs?
Yeah.
But if you listen to that song, that's the Wrecking Crew playing on it.
Wow.
That's Billy Strange playing that fuzz guitar. The record was produced by Lee Hazelwood.
Yeah, wow.
It's just a little, Dino, Desi, and Billy singing.
Yeah.
It's a really great record.
Yeah.
I was like, I gotta put this up there because, people think it's not cool. They think it's like Teeny Bop or or something. But that's a really good record.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah,
so that's the kind of thing I like to throw something up there that's kind of off the wall.
Right.
Other really cool stuff I brought up there was I have a rare version of David Bowie doing. It was like the demo that he used to give to Mott the Hoople for all the young dudes.
Wow.
Playing sax on it and stuff, and it's like pretty amazing.
Wow.
And then last week I had a song from this guy from Connecticut called Roger Reel.
Yeah.
He put out a power pop album in the 70s, and then he was recording another one, and then the record company fell apart, and it got shelved.
Right.
But in between the first record and the second record, Mick Ronson got to hear them and really liked them, and came down and played on their sessions.
Oh, wow.
So there was this treasure trove of an album with Mick Ronson playing on it that nobody ever had heard in 40 years. So his label sent me a copy of it, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is phenomenal!"
Wow!
So I did that last week.
Oh wow, that's incredible.
Cool when you get stuff like that.
Yeah,
stuff that's like, this has to be heard.
Yeah. Oh, but anyway, you guys are always finding cool stuff that it just You go, what was this thing, man? I haven't heard this. This is so cool. It makes you excited to listen to radio because That's why I enjoy listening to you guys, because it's just, you're always finding something new. You're discovering something.
Well, I have
a
pretty big record collection. So, you know, once I got down here and I got my record player set back up and started digging through my 45 collection and stuff, I was like, oh, I remember this. Oh, yeah. Well, let's play Cotton Pickin' Rocker, or, you know, I find stuff that, like, you know, I was like, yeah, I mean, you don't hear this stuff. You don't hear it anywhere.
Right.
So it's fun. It really is fun.
And also, too, your background in the whole New York scene. There's you as a 14-year-old kid, man, you were around some heavy duty stuff. You know what I mean?
Well, you know, Johnny Thunders asked me to join Gang War, and I was like, I'm not going to play in a band with those guys with all the heroin they're taking.
Yeah, it's wild.
He was a fireman. He knew all the cops.
Yeah.
You know, I couldn't get away with shit. You know. I'm like, I'm not gonna even. I can't even be seen with these guys.
Yeah.
My dad was a pretty tough guy. I mean, he had fought in World War II, and he was the fireman in the neighborhood. His fire truck was the one that would come if my house went on fire.
Yeah, Pop was right there, man. He didn't work five cities down.
He worked in the firehouse. That's why I inherited his 1964 Mercury, because it hardly had any miles on it.
Oh,
yeah. I'm like, up until like 1980, I'm driving around in a 64 Mercury Comet.
Oh, that's awesome, man. Yeah. Well, hey, Speedy, it was a pleasure chatting with you, man. I appreciate you hanging out and telling me more about growing up and all your influences. There's a lot of cool stuff you got there, man.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
And any other go ahead.
I was just going to say it was a lot of fun.
Any other
not to mention my white hairdo.
Yeah, I was going to say, man, you got the whole new look going there. I like it, man. Yeah.
Well, you know,
who is that guy?
The quarantine color.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we just were like, look, I married a hairdresser.
Sure, yeah.
You know, we didn't want to go to the store and buy hair dye. And I was like, yeah, I'm kind of over it anyway. We don't own a hair salon anymore, and I'm not in Hollywood. What the hell, you know?
Yeah.
I'm not going to be dyeing my hair. We had the Manic Panic salon, and I always dyed my hair because I didn't want them to go, who's the old dude sitting at the desk? You know?
Well, so now, any other music? You said you got some recordings. Are you gonna?
Oh yeah, well I've been some of the old Fuzztones guys, Ira and Alon. They were in the first round of the Fuzztones, the New York Fuzztones. They contacted me and said they were doing some projects that I virtually want to record with them, and so we made an album and we called it the Overdrive 5. And you can find that up on iTunes and Spotify and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was my idea, the Overdrive 5. I was looking down at this fuzz box on the floor, and I was like, well, there's only 4 of us. Too bad there's not another guy we could call it the Overdrive 5. They go, who cares? Let's call it anyway. Even though there's 4 of us.
Who cares?
Overdrive 5, but there's only 4 of us.
Yeah, right on. Now that's exciting. So of course, your show is on the Speedie John program is on it's Sunday 1 a.m.
1 a.m. West Coast time, which is 4 o'clock East Coast time.
Yeah.
So basically, I'm closing time on the West Coast.
That's right.
If you're home from a bar, you can tune in and listen to me. Yeah. And on the East Coast, you know, if you're getting up early, go to church.
That's right. There you go.
Church with Speedie John.
That's right, man. That's cool. It's a great show, man, and I appreciate all the support you guys have given us, man. So
well, thanks a lot, and I hope to see you soon.
All right, brother. Take care, man. Nice chatting with you, Speedy.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye.